Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Rolling Conversations, a really exciting week for Rolling Conversations because our theme for this afternoon is Indigenous sports stars. And haven't we got three of them right here? To everyone watching along at home and online, welcome. If you're in lockdown, as a lot of our community is throughout New South Wales in particular, but also around Australia, thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us and connecting with us today. Love to introduce our three guests today. First of all, Clarence McCarthy-Grogan joining us from the Northern Territory, who likes to be called CJ. So, CJ, how are you, mate?
Yeah, going all right. Thanks, Mick. Thanks for inviting me here today, and yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, it's great to have you all the way from the Northern Territory. So welcome to Rolling Conversations. Jake Field coming to us from Parramatta, I think. Jake, welcome to Rolling Conversations.
Thanks, Mick. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, and Gary Eller. Gary, it's wonderful to have you with us as an Indigenous sports star, not only obviously a great sports person in your own right and coach, but your nephew, Jake Field. So for those watching along at home that don't know that connection, you're also connected to our community. So welcome to you, Gary.
Mate, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you all. I'm on Camaragal land in the Eora Nation. I'm coming to you from Manly this afternoon, and we're going to talk a bit about where everyone is and their connection to land. So if I may, on that topic, just start, CJ, with you, mate, because you've got an interesting background. You've from the Northern Territory, from Darwin originally, spent some time with us in wheelchair sports in Sydney, but and back in Darwin now. Tell us about where you're from originally, mate.
Yes, I was born here in Darwin on Larrakia land. I'm a Yanyuwa and Gardawa man from Borroloola on my mother's side, which is up in the Gulf of Carpentaria, and also Googie Ellingy from my father's side up in far north Queensland. So I've been playing wheelchair basketball now for about 17 years, and I made the move from Darwin to Sydney and attended boarding school back in 2008, I believe it was, and I finished up in 2011. So I attended for 4 years and ended up making the decision to live in Sydney after school had finished to be able to keep playing at the national level in the NWBL. And once I guess made up my decision or was ready to go to college, I made the move to go to the University of Texas at Arlington back at the end of 2016, and I've been studying public health since then, and I've still got 1 more year to go of school, so I'm looking forward to getting back to the US probably in the next month or two.
Yeah, great. And of course, we have our fingers crossed for you tomorrow with the announcement of the national team, the Rollers, to go to Tokyo. So, you know, mid-morning we'll find out whether you're on your way to Tokyo too, which is very exciting. So thanks, mate, for that. Jake, what about you, mate? What's your background? Where do you hail from?
Yeah, well, our family has strong ties to the far south coast. Yeah, family comes from there, and La Perouse.
Great.
Yeah.
And Gary, I suppose similar to you, is it? What's your connection?
Oh, yeah, it's very close. I mean, from my mother's side, Jake's grandmother, it's from the Yuin Nation. So basically, they moved up and down the south coast, lived in a lot of parts. And in Sydney, it's Bidjigal, which is part of the Dharawal language groups. And, you know, we generally say when we're talking about Bidjigal, it's also a part of the Eora Nation.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. I'm really interested to talk to you about the role of sport growing up. I'm interested, you know, I'll get to you in a second, Gary, because you were one of 12 kids growing up, so I'm fascinated to hear a bit more about that. Jake, I might start with you, mate. What role did sport play in your family growing up and in your house?
Oh, yeah, it was all sport pretty much. We were all very competitive. Growing up, pretty much rugby my whole life. Yeah, it was then had my accident and then got into the wheelchair rugby, which was probably the best thing I ever did. Like after I had my accident, it took me a while to get involved, but once I got into it, meeting all the guys, you know, it was a good bunch of guys playing. Yeah, it keeps me going back for more. Like they're all, can't have these young fellas running rings around me too often. So yeah, it keeps me going back.
I agree with that. And, mate, just so everyone in our community knows, you're part of the national champions, the GIO New South Wales Gladiators, of course, just over a month ago on the Gold Coast. That must have been a thrill going through that weekend undefeated and sticking it to everyone around the country and lifting the trophy at the end of the weekend. What a success.
Yeah, it was a great weekend. Yeah, it was really good, especially after, I think we haven't really done anything for the last 18 months. So to go away and to play for three days against some of the best guys in the country, it was good, rewarding, very rewarding at the end. And it was nice to come home, and I had a couple of sore shoulders afterwards, let me tell you.
I'm sure. Hey, CJ, what about you? What role did sport play for you as a young bloke in the NT?
Look, I think growing up, I played nearly all sports codes that I can think of, but that's just because I was a very, very active kid, and I had a lot of cousins that played sport. My parents had both played sports when they were kids as well, growing up. So, but I mean, I think sports is such a valuable tool. It's pretty much been the vehicle for me throughout my life, from getting from Darwin to Sydney, then Sydney to the US, and it's allowed me to travel the world, playing the sport that I love. So I think sport's very important, because the exciting part about it is you don't know what journey lies ahead. Never in my wildest dreams could I imagine that I'd visit certain countries, and I've been to Turkey, I've been to Thailand, I've been to Japan, and even just visiting the US. It's given me awesome opportunities, and especially to be able to get a scholarship and live in the US for the last 4 or 5 years. It's just been a wild journey, but I've definitely been so grateful for all the opportunities that sport has given me. But I think, if I hadn't played sport, I don't really know where I'd be. I feel like I probably would have just stayed in Darwin. So it's definitely been the vehicle to get me through life, not only as an athlete with a disability, but just also as an Indigenous man as well. It's helped me grow as a person within the sport, and just off the court as well. So it's definitely important in my life, and it always will be. And yeah, I'm just very grateful to be in the position that I am now. So.
Yeah, great. Thanks, mate, for sharing. And Gary, you're a legend of Australian rugby, 6 tests for the Wallabies, obviously playing so many years of rugby with your brothers at Randwick and for the New South Wales side. You've coached, most teams as well. But I'm interested in the early days. I mean, with 12 kids, you pretty much had your own team back then. Sport must have played a huge role in your life.
Yeah, we grew up in quite a competitive family, whether that was on the sporting fields or at the kitchen table. Growing up at La Perouse, all the kids played either touch football. We played cricket. We'd hit the ball against the walls with a tennis racket. It was just non-stop. And the thing about it being competitive as well, it also led to being competitive at school as well. So while we were at school, to be able to do well and to be able to participate in the sports, we had to do well at school as well. So that sort of pushed us right through our early years and right into our careers. But growing up, we had cousins across the road, cousins next door, cousins on the other side, and every afternoon there'd be 20 or 30 kids just playing in the middle of the road, touch football, which generally finished up playing tackle, and we'd be doing that on the bitumen, and you'd be becoming scratched up, but you had to hold your ground with the older players as well, and it just taught us a lot of discipline. It sharpened some skills was coming up, and and it presented a lot of rewards later on, because a lot of those skills went through to the young playing for the fun of it. Continued to be fun, but it got a lot more competitive when we went and played at senior levels. It certainly helped. And I keep saying, if I keep going into the wee bit, it's because Glenn and Mark are only a year older than what I am. And our careers pretty much mirrored with each other, and all the years that we played representative football, it was basically the three of us playing in the same teams and playing club rugby as well.
And we know, a lot of us do know the incredible story of your three brothers, but I also learned that your sister played netball for Australia as well.
Yeah, she was outstanding. She was probably the toughest person to play when we're playing touch on the road as well. She's a pretty strong, talented young lady.
Yeah, great. Wow, what a family. I'm interested in the idea of role models. We do talk about it, role models a lot on Rolling Conversations, and in particular, Indigenous role models. CJ, I might start with you, mate. Have you got anyone that you looked up to as a young bloke who you idolised or you loved their story?
Yeah, I mean, I think growing up, you know, it'd be hard to look past Paddy Mills with the Australian Boomers. I first met Paddy back probably, I think it was about 16 years ago at a junior nationals, and a coach had come up to me and said, "Watch this guy. He's going to be the face of Australia in the future of the Boomers." And yeah, look where he is today. You know, he's going to be the flag bearer for the Olympics, and or you know, one of the flag bearers, and it's just sensational to see that he was selected. And I think it's very rewarding, and he very much so deserves it as well. And it's exciting to see him become one of the senior guys of this Boomers squad. And he's just a very awesome player to watch, and you know, he can do make a lot of magic happen on the court. So and that's also very exciting to watch. Yeah, but a real leader.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? I agree. Hey, Jake, what about you, mate? And given your uncle's on the line, you should probably say him. But are there any other Indigenous role models?
They went all right. I think some of my mates, when some of my mates would meet them, they were more excited than, you know, more role models to them than what they were to me. So, but no, having those guys growing up with, you know, obviously great role models, not just on the footy field but off it as well. You know. The three of them have been a big influence on my life. So,
yeah, great. Any other sports that you followed, Jake, as a young bloke? I mean, rugby probably would have been fairly present for you. You played with the two Blues, Parramatta.
League, cricket, you know, any sort of sport. I'd always be watching some sort of sport, mate, on TV. Anything pretty much. Loved it.
Are you a Parramatta supporter in the league?
No, in league. I'm a Brisbane Broncos supporter in league, mate.
How do we let this bloke in?
Don't let you know.
He's not the only one in the family that follows the Broncos. There's a couple of others. I'm not included in that.
Good.
But there are a few others.
There's a couple of us, and I'm a Queensland tragic too, would you believe it? In the state of Wellington.
I didn't know any of that before we got you on, mate. Hey, Gary, interested in obviously you grew up at a different era to CJ and Jake. Who were your Indigenous role models or people that you looked up to as a young bloke?
Yeah, as a young bloke, there was a couple of extremely talented rugby league players that going through: Kevin Longbottom, Eric Sims, and my uncle Bruce Larper Stewart, which was well known because he was from La Rose, and he used to make us stand out as kids, and he used to pass us the ball, and he used to make us kick it, and you know, we hardly out of nappies at this stage, and already that, you know, he had us with the ball. My brother Rodney played while he was at primary school. He was vice captain of the New South Wales League team and captain of the New South Wales cricket team. So he was an outstanding sports person. So we always tried to follow him. And to be as good as what he was. You know, so there's a few, and all very close. They're all at La Perouse. I think that lifestyle-wise, you know, reading the story about Charlie Perkins and, you know, the way he played soccer and, you know, still did very well on the political scene, you know, he's a great role model for me as well.
Yeah, great. Hey, we got a message there from Melissa Morrison, Go the Broncos. So if we could just get her blocked, please, that'd be great. I think Melissa might be known to you, Jake, yes?
Oh, yeah, no, she's all right. She's my sister.
Okay, all right. We probably shouldn't block her then. No more Broncos chat, please.
Shouldn't she be working?
CJ, have you got a rugby league team? Just so now that I found out about this, I feel like I need to ask everybody.
Yeah, I'm actually a North Queensland Cowboys supporter.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's really a turn I wasn't ready for.
Turning this camera off now.
No, not to worry. Hey, CJ, we've got a question there from Keegan O'Chee, who says, how do you manage keeping it so deadly while travelling and competing?
I just try to keep motivated and focused on what my goals are. And, you've just got to keep remembering, no matter what the tough times are like, you've got to remember all the good times as well. And just got to try and stay as positive as you can. I think especially in this last 12 to 18 months since, in regards to COVID, it's quite easy to fall in that mindset of negativity and knowing what you're missing out on or what you don't have. But we've also got to be thankful to remember what we still have today, and just got to make the most of those opportunities. And that's just in everyday life, so on and off the court. Yeah, well said.
Well said. I'm interested in Indigenous athletes, given we're doing rolling conversations, Indigenous sports stars. And is there anything, and I'll ask Gary you first, is there anything about Indigenous athletes, or what makes the Indigenous athletes that we've seen so great? Is there anything that you would be able to put your finger on about our athletes, our Indigenous Australian athletes, that across sports, we've just got so many wonderful sports people?
Yeah, I think that I touched on it a little bit earlier. We're competitive. Aboriginal people are always competitive. They seem to be really good with natural skills. And I could say that between me and my two brothers, Mark and Glenn, I was the clumsy one in the family. So I had to really work hard. But a lot of the ball skills, a lot of, the eye ball connection, it's natural. It's something that's just instinctive, and people really enjoy it. I know that the players that I've played with, the players that I've watched, always seem to be having a good time. They always seem to be enjoying themselves on the field. They always seem to be showing off. And I think that we're really good at that. We're just natural showmen. We just want to get out there, do our best, entertain people, and just really push the limits.
Mm. Hey, that's cool. And Jake, I wonder, can you relate to that idea Gary's talking about, both in terms of, the kind of the showmanship as well as...
Mate, I'm not fast enough to be showing off, let me tell you, all right.
But I imagine that idea, that competitiveness. I've seen that with you, Jake, in the wheelchair rugby team. Can you relate to what Gary's talking about there?
Yeah, competitiveness. Yeah. We just grew up on it. Like, especially being in a large family, if you couldn't compete, you sort of got stuck to the side, sort of thing. So definitely 100%.
Yeah, cool. What about you, CJ? I haven't had the pleasure of watching you play yet, mate, but hopefully, fingers crossed, you get announced in the team tomorrow, and we'll all be watching on in Tokyo. Can you relate to that idea of competitiveness?
Oh yeah, I think that's something that I've always enjoyed. Really, is just being a competitive person when it comes to sport, especially. Off the court, I'm pretty easygoing, down to earth. I'm not too competitive off the court, but yeah, once you pass that line, I guess, on the basketball court, it's business time, and you just got to realize, straight away, you're with and against some really great players on the floor. So yeah, like Jake said, you kind of get pushed into that competitive spirit, and you can't afford to not be competitive because you'll get burnt otherwise. So you just kind of learn, especially as a kid, growing up. I started playing in the National League, I think as a 15, 16-year-old, and had to learn the hard way for the first few years, playing with all the big boys. And now I'm one of the big boys, thankfully, in the league, and it's still very competitive. So you've always got to be on your game, that's for sure.
Hey, and CJ, we've got a question here from Luke Popel, of course, who says, "Hey, Clarence, who is your favourite 2.5 and why is it Luke Popel?"
It's definitely Luke Popel. one of my good mates from junior days growing up, and he plays for the Wollongong Roller Hawks, and we're both in the Rollers squad together. And he's actually, speaking of being competitive and showing a bit of flair and magic. He's actually one of the guys that I've grown up playing with in that sort of style, and like to compete and put on a bit of a show as well. So definitely Luke Popel is one of those guys as well.
Oh, he's all of our favourite 2.5, but one of my favourite messages so far. So thanks for watching on, Luke, and please do send your questions through. We'd love to get to them. Gary, I'm interested in, you were talking about that idea, and in fact, Jake and CJ, you've all referenced it, when you're playing sport, you know, out in the street as young guys. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, isn't there, in terms of, you know, perhaps some of our sports have elite pathways and, you know, they pull young people out of club footy and all the rest of it into academies and different things, and they play their role. But there's something to be said, isn't there, for that, I suppose, you know, being inducted into a sport, boots and all, get out there and you know, sort of compete in that very egalitarian way, Gary.
Yeah, a lot of the skills that I mentioned, a lot of them are just instinctive. And sometimes when you get into those academies, you're sort of overtrained and they don't go back to the base skills that you already have. But you need to work on your fitness, you need to work on your mental side to prepare once you start getting to the higher levels. And sometimes it becomes a real strain on a lot of Aboriginal people, and that's where they need the support. You know, as talented as a lot of the players are, they do need that support off the field, out of the training session, somewhere where they can just go and relax. And I'm glad CJ said that he can go back and he can just relax and he can just turn off. That's important. A lot of people can't do that. So, you know, when you do get into the academies and you're still doing the hard work, you need to be able to switch off. And a lot of times it's just having a mentor, someone to talk to, or an activity outside the sport to go to. And it may mean just go back and playing on the road with your mates, because it's a thing that drives you. It's the thing that you enjoy doing. And sometimes when it starts to get real, it starts to feel like work, sometimes then you need to relax, and it's a good way of doing it.
And I read somewhere online that you're quite the fisherman, Gary. So is that one of your outlets? You know,
it is. Unlike the other guys who said that they don't like fishing because unless they catch a fish in the first 10 minutes, I do it because that's my relaxing time. If I catch a fish, that's a bonus. And as Jake knows, he knows I always catch fish. But if I catch a fish, it's a bonus for me because I just like getting out in the sun and just enjoying it.
Yeah, nice. And you mentioned earlier, Gary, you're up Lake Macquarie way now, so I imagine there'll be some fishing in your future.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. We've only been here for a short while, and I've got the fishing kayak, so I'm looking forward to getting on it.
Yeah, nice. We had a message, Jake, earlier, I think from Pat Curtin, about you being the best-looking bloke in wheelchair rugby. So, I mean, that's a given, obviously. So we've got a question here from Tim Rubin, and it's outside of the sporting arena. What type of life lessons do you think sport teaches, especially for young kids? CJ, can I direct that question to you first, mate? What do you think?
Yeah, look, I think it pretty much forces kids to be able to learn how to work together. I know as a kid, you kind of look back at it and you can always see the competitive kids and the kids who aren't as competitive, but it's really nice to see when you got the competitive kids wanting to help the other kids who aren't as competitive, or maybe they're just not confident enough to play the sport or get involved. And it's really nice. That's probably the best part about it, is seeing the talented kids wanting to actually help give back and get other people involved. And I think that's just very important in life. Because, you know, we all go through our own sort of obstacles, I guess, we have to get through or get over. And sport's a really good way to allow people to work together to achieve a common goal, and especially when it comes to team sports. And I'm pretty big on that. I've always played a team sport majority of my life. And that's because I'm just, you know, family orientated, and I love working with other people and I like getting to know other people. So it's also about building relationships, and whether it's with my own teammates or it's the opposition, because, you know, at the end of the day, you're all there to do a job and have fun, but at the same time, it's really good to have those lifelong friendships off the court as well.
Yeah, no doubt. There is a wonderful camaraderie, isn't there, to wheelchair sport? And I do liken it to rugby in terms of, you beat each other up on the field and then you have a beer together afterwards if that's your tipple. But interested, Gary, in your perspective on that question. You have referenced a little bit of it, but what are those life lessons you spoke about earlier, a couple of them, that young kids get from participating in sport?
Yeah, I think I could sit here for the next hour, but not give a better answer than what Clarence has just given us. So I think, that working together as a team, getting to rely on people and rely on you, and working for that, the goal that you're both aiming for, or that the team's aiming for, and working towards that. I think that's really important. The fact that if you do make an error along the way, that there are people there that'll pick you up, and at the same time, if someone in your team has made that error too, that you can accept it and you can work with him and pick him up and travel that journey together. That's what CJ said was perfect.
Yeah, he did too. It was beautifully said. Jake, have you got anything to add there, mate? I mean, there is a wonderful camaraderie amongst that wheelchair rugby community, and you're a big part of that.
Yeah, look, what these guys both said, the friendships you make with these guys as well. You spend a lot of time with them, and it's just another network away from your family and your friends, and it's a different connection. So I love it.
Yeah, great. Hey, we've got a few minutes left, and please, do let us know if you've got any other questions out there. I've got another one for you, CJ, and I believe this is something that you're interested in as well. How do we encourage Indigenous Australians into wheelchair sport? Have you got some ideas for us at Wheelchair Sports New South Wales, ACT? We really want to, participate in this area and play a role, but we need your guidance. What do you think we can do better?
I think, when going out in communities, especially going out regional areas, I think we've got to try and find a way to reach out to local community members as well, for the land that you're on as well. I think that'll be a handy first step, just getting to know, who's the owners of that land that you end up going on first, and just trying to make a connection there with the local mob there, because I think that'll definitely go a long way. And that'll also show that, you're also wanting to learn about Aboriginal culture as well. So, and I think that'll make the relationship a lot easier at first. But that's something, I'd like to do down the track here in the Territory, and travel the Northern Territory to try and find, more athletes, or future Indigenous stars, in the sport, or in the adapted athletics sporting world, and that's something that'll definitely take some time to grow. But I think, we've just got to keep finding more positive role models and influences as well. And I think this is a great way to start, was having this conversation, obviously because nobody can really travel. So having this conversation on today is very important. And who knows, the next time we might chat could be in a few weeks, could be in a few months. Hopefully we can try and inspire or influence some other younger kids to want to do what we do. And and that's why for me, the way that I got involved was just going to boarding school, and not saying that's the route for everyone. Everyone's got their own journey, but that was the way that I kept motivated, was having to move from Darwin, unfortunately. And yes, I did get homesick quite a lot, but as they were going back to mentors again. But my parents were the ones that were my big supporters and reminding me, just stick with it, because they could see a lot more positives and negatives. And me as a 14, 15-year-old kid, it's kind of the end of the world at that time. But as I got older, you started to see things. Your eyes open up a bit more, and you start to enter the real world after school as well. And I think the more we can find, even just any Indigenous athletes that's part of the wheelchair sports, and if they'd like to actually go out to some of the communities as well, I think that would be a real help to wanting to get more people involved in the future, for sure.
Oh, that's great, mate. Thank you. I want to just acknowledge Craig Jarvis has sent us a message there. G'day, Craig. Decades of service to wheelchair sport, and so many of our athletes in our community owe their careers to being found by Craig through the rehabilitation hospital system. So g'day, Craig, and hope you're doing well, mate, in isolation or lockdown, so where you are. CJ, we'd love to stay close to you on that, though, CJ, on that idea, and I can say that you're one of those role models already, mate, that people look up to. So if we can stay in touch with you on that idea, we'd love to. Can I ask you, Gary, you've had, so post your incredible rugby career, you also, you coached for a long time, and also then you've been involved in a lot of work with the council and connecting with communities that way. Is there anything that you can help us to understand about how we might grow wheelchair sport for Indigenous Australians?
Yeah, as the word CJ was talking about again, it's making connections. It's really important to connect to the land, connect to the locals, connect to support networks as well. And generally, if you're, an Aboriginal person is in an environment where there's not too many Aboriginal people there, you got to find some connections. You got to find them somewhere where they can go to speak to people. And in a lot of cases, I'll give a quick example of that. Is I worked in an office in Redfern and for a number of years, and I reckon every second week there'd be someone, a leagues club or a rugby club, was saying that they've lost their players. They've gone missing. And I said, well, leave it to me. I'll make a few phone calls. And I used to just call the community around the place, and they were related to somebody. So that's where they were. It's just that they were putting them in homes and houses and with other families, but there was no connection. And they were getting homesick. They were missing their parents, or missing, their mates. So they were going out looking for the family that were living in Sydney. You've got to set that up in advance. You've got to make sure that the people that you're encouraging to stay in the sport know where their connections are, know where they're going to get the support. And the role models is excellent. If you can get some people to go out and speak to people about what they expect before they come to the cities, if that's what they need to do to continue the sport, and introduce them to the right people.
Yeah, well said. Well, we just had a message from Paralympian Sarah Stewart, who all said that you are role models in your respective sports, and I couldn't agree with that more. It's been such a privilege to spend time with all three of you because, Gary, we go a long way back, and I've admired you for a long time, and your contribution to your sport, but more than that, just as a man, as a role model for me too, as a young bloke. You coached me as a 19-year-old, and I always remember a lot of what you taught me. And Jake, most of it. And Jake, I see people respond to you, from our wheelchair rugby community again, from very young to older people that come along, and they really attract to you and the role that you play in that community. You're really a much loved member of that team. So, it's been wonderful to share space and time with you tonight as well.
No, thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
And CJ, I'm just getting to know you, mate. But as I say, we'll be fingers crossed for you tomorrow for the rollers announcement. And if it all goes well, and we hope that it will, we'll be tuning in to the Tokyo Paralympics in a month or so now, and watch you guys rip in over in Tokyo.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mick. Appreciate it. And no, it's been a great conversation today. It's definitely a good starting point. And yeah, looking forward to sort of seeing where this can go from here, really.
Indeed. Well, we're up for it. That's why we wanted to have tonight, is first of all to share space and time with you guys, but also to ask that question about how we can do more. So I've learned stuff tonight from all of you. And yes, let's hope tonight's rolling conversation is the start of an ongoing conversation and some work in this area for us. Thank you to everyone that's been watching on tonight for Rolling Conversations. We'll, of course, be back next week. But we thank Gary Eller, Jake Field and CJ McCarthy-Grogan for being with us tonight on Rolling Conversations. Thanks very much, guys.
No worries. Thank you.
See you later, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.